I tattooed my face when I was 16, and I surprisingly don't regret it. Just to be clear here, do not do your own tattoos and do not do what I'm going to talk about in this video because as crazy as this story is about to be, I actually got lucky and you'll understand what I mean by that later on. This video is not an endorsement or meant to inspire anybody to tattoo themselves. So I got into tattooing when I was around 16 or 17 because my neighbor had a tattoo machine and we would hang out and smoke a lot, and one day she offered to do a couple here or there on my arm. Now, knowing my young, impulsive, dopamine-driven teen self, that would never be enough. So I ended up borrowing her machine a lot, and one day, I'll never forget, she asked me, "Blake, why don't you just buy your own machine and then you won't always have to borrow mine?" Now, I remember exactly where I was when she asked me that, and at first, I was annoyed that she was annoyed because I don't like attitude. But then I remember pausing and thinking to myself, if I do this, it will be the end, and who knows what I'll look like in a year. So obviously being 16, that was an impeccable idea. So I bought one, did all this research on high quality inks and the right angle and depth and technique, and the rest is history. Now, most of you watching are probably thinking, what about getting a job, or how did your parents allow that? And to answer all your questions, basically my mom cried at first, but now she surprisingly loves them. My dad was pissed, but eventually thought they were cool. And I never worried about a job because I never wanted the typical job to begin with. Now, trust me, I know most teens go through this phase of rebelling against society and rejecting normal ways of life. And honestly, that isn't a feeling you should trust being so young. But as you're going to find out later on in this video, my tattoos haven't been as limiting in terms of opportunity as some of you might think. And also, even though I said I never wanted a normal job, I was actually never turned down for my tattoos, and I worked in kitchens, grocery stores, and was even a manager of a pretty nice retail job. If anything, normal jobs ironically taught me just how palatable my tattoos are because on multiple occasions I had customers come in literally mouth agape, shocked, telling me how beautiful and unique I look, to the point that I felt embarrassed because I'm getting showered with all these compliments and my coworkers are just awkwardly standing there getting ignored and probably getting annoyed. Anyways, the reason I said earlier that I was lucky is basically because the meaning and significance of my tattoos are so genuine and intrinsic to who I am and who I've always been. And that's why I think I have the ability to not regret them and am able to not only appreciate them, but also say that they are my favorite. I think this is because I'm the type of person that is truly in touch with my genuine self. And honestly, I cannot remember a time in my life where I didn't know who I was or when I didn't stick to my core principles or beliefs, even if that meant going against the grain or becoming ostracized and bullied. So to some, being this type of person either means I have an incredibly strong sense of self, or to others, like my teachers and parents, I'm just stubborn and think I'm always right. The reason I think I'm like this, as ironic as this might sound, is because I was raised in the church, and a core theme of Christianity, besides worshiping God, is going against the norm and doing what's right, even if that means getting crucified or challenging the most powerful empire on earth. I also have an incredible mother that raised us to be true to ourselves no matter what. So the tattoos I chose to get were not about a trend, specific style I had at the time, or to look cool to the people around me. They were tributary to what I believe and have believed since I was a literal toddler. Now, I know y'all are like, what in the hell does that even mean? So let me hurry up and give you context so you can understand what I'm saying. So basically, growing up, I always had something that I was into or obsessed with that gave me my purpose and joy, kind of like hyperfixation that people with ADHD or autism also experience. For me, I was and am able to find a genuine appreciation, wonder, and just love for literally everything and anything that exists. From learning about physics and astronomy and how the universe functions, all the way to psychology and the arts and why people do the things they do, it seems that there's just this hunger deep in me to know as much as I can about everything that there is to know. Now, the world we live in doesn't really nurture people who think like me, and honestly, for good reason. For example, one of the biggest breakthroughs of the Industrial Revolution that created the modern world that we all live in is the division of labor and the assembly line. When you get people to divide their labor and specialize on a single task, work becomes more efficient and reliable. In this same way, our modern world has a philosophy of division and specialization. Find something you like, double down, become an expert on it, and make a career from it. That was always something I struggled with. How could anyone expect me to tame this incredible curiosity and wonder within myself to focus on a single thing? It was just hard for me to grapple with, and something I tried to do all throughout my childhood. Basically, as I grew older, I came to recognize that this everything I'm so passionate about could also be in itself a single something. So instead of feeling so distraught because I can't just stick to one thing and feeling so different and untethered, I shifted my perspective and decided that no, wait, I am into something. It's just that this something is everything. Now, I don't want to get too deep into my beliefs because when I do finally make a tattoo explanation video, I will explain that all. But basically, like I said earlier, I was raised Christian, ended up actually reading the Bible, and horrified at what I learned, I instantaneously became an atheist. However, during my atheist era, there was still always this constant nagging voice in my head that would bring me back to learning about religions and religious history and kept telling me that God doesn't have to only live in the Abrahamic faiths. Fast forward to basically the present, and that everything I talked about before is now what I perceive as God. So to me, it's like God isn't just a separate personal being, but is all that there is, was, and will be, including the universe. In this way, anything you love and enjoy, from people to hobbies, sports, or careers, is actually an appreciation of a portion of the divine, because we all exist within that incredibly immense abstract thing. I now think my genuine appreciation and curiosity about everything is actually a form of love, and maybe even the unconditional love that people talk about experiencing when they die. Now, there's actually studies on this, but NDEs tend to have a common theme of seeing a white light, leaving your body, meeting a being that they interpret as God, and this overwhelming sense of love that cannot be put into words. One thing that has also fascinated me, though, is that some people will say that this being or God loves not just people or even just living things, but reality itself and everything in general. In that way, it's like maybe my appreciation and wonder is really just me finding love in all of reality and being able to really appreciate all the processes unfolding around us all the time. What I'm recognizing in my love for learning or of reality is a love for myself and of God, because we are one and the same. We are not separate. But to really explain to you the extent of my spiritual background growing up, I remember being like 10 years old, getting into very deep conversations about God with my dad and grandfather, like talking about moral dilemmas, and if you're a Christian but you go to war and you kill someone, does that mean you're going to go to hell because you're killing someone? And I even saw myself with spiritual face tattoos as early as 13 or 14. Before I did get these tattoos, I was always obsessed with religious history and this idea of different expressions of religious devotion. So I was really fascinated with, for instance, like the bindis in Hinduism and the head coverings of Islam or Judaism. This choice to sacrifice a part of your individuality to express a devotion or connection to something so meaningful was always very beautiful and poetic to me. Before I got the tattoos, I was obsessed with covering my head in so many different ways, and even to this day, I obviously still do it. But this concept of religious devotion always resonated with me. To me, face tattoos obviously are, I guess, the biggest sacrificial devotion you could think of. And honestly, as more time has gone on, it feels more like my tattoos are a postmodern, campy form of art. Not really something I feel is too sacrificial, because sacrifices have negative connotations, and I genuinely love them and their meanings. So anyways, now that you guys have that little piece of context, you can understand that obviously I'm very spiritual, and the tattoos on my face are supposed to be tributary towards that. Again, I will go into much more detail later on when I make my explanation video, but in a way, this is why I said I was lucky. Most young people, and really just people in general, get tattoos that revolve around a style or trend. So as we inevitably age, we grow out of that style and are more likely to end up regretting that choice. With me though, as you've seen, I've always been preoccupied by thoughts of God and the universe and philosophy. And so my tattoos kind of transcend trend, at least for me. I honestly say anyone who's thinking of getting a tattoo, no matter where, should always ask themselves this. Are you getting this tattoo because you think it looks cool, or because it's trendy, or because it has a deep, immovable personal meaning? This is why, again, I feel genuinely uniquely lucky. I'm also so thankful that I did them in a way that followed my natural features of my face and not just randomly plastered on my cheek like you'll see a lot of people or rappers do today. Now, the last thing I did want to talk about was jobs and career opportunities. You might remember in the beginning of the video that I said my tattoos weren't as limiting as one might think. And what I meant by this is when I first did them, I got flown out to LA and Chicago for modeling and actually made a lot of friends online and even turned down some other modeling opportunities because I didn't really like modeling. But I'm definitely not saying here that get face tattoos for clout, because again, it might work at first, but then you'll probably regret them later on. And honestly, face tattoos are so common today that it probably wouldn't even work. But in terms of jobs, at first I was originally just going to stick to writing, art, and YouTube. But all the videos that I've been making has taught me that I have a real passion for philosophy, history, and religion. So now I'm actually planning on going back to school for theology, anthropology, and possibly psychology. I don't know about you, but I think I look perfect for something like theology or anthropology. So again, I am lucky that I got such visible tattoos so young that happened to align so thoroughly with my genuine interest. How many of you can look at who you were when you were 16 and say, I'm the same exact person? I knew what I wanted at 16 that I know that I want at 25. We all change so much. So this is just weird that I got lucky to get what I got and feel like they really genuinely resonate with me to this day. My advice to all of you though is that if the tattoos you are thinking of getting are for a trend or aesthetic, really recognize the possibility of future regret because interest shifts and people change. If you were to ask me, do I think you should get a face tattoo? I'd probably say no unless it was cultural. The stigma and spotlight that having such visible tattoos like mine creates means you really have to feel passionate about what they represent. Otherwise, you'll just feel dumb when everybody keeps asking you what they mean and you don't really know what to say. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and let me know if you have any tattoos or if you have any that you regret. And I hope you all have a very good day.